Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Claire Munoz. I am the Charles N. Mathewson Senior Director of Education and Engagement here at the Nevada Museum of Art, and I welcome all of you today. Just wanted to do a little housekeeping and recognize that we do have a Zoom audience joining us today, so we are going to stick to our schedule. We've made some modifications with COVID, so for all of you joining us, this is the schedule that we're looking at. We decided to move lunch, rather than having it in the middle of the program, move it to the end of the day, and lunch will be box lunches. So if you're not comfortable having lunch in a shared space, you're welcome to take that home with you, or if you prefer, you are welcome to have it with you here today. And we move that again to the end. So it's kind of a late lunch, but we do have a break. We do have snacks at any time if you'd like to get up and use the restroom. It's just down the hall over here on your left-hand side. And it's just really lovely to have so many people here with us today. And again, just acknowledging the Zoom audience, you'll notice that Judith Lamarr is not with us today. She is joining us from home. She has not been feeling well, and certainly she is missed, but we're going to do all that we can to honor her today and hope that she feels this love from the room and from the Zoom audience as she's watching from home. So thank you for joining us, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Anne.
Thank you, Claire, and welcome everyone. My name is Ann Wolf, and I'm the Chief Curator and Associate Director here at the Nevada Museum of Art. And I've also had the honor of curating Judith Lamarr's exhibition and helping to share her story with all of you and everyone who will see it, as well as the book that we produced. I'd like to take a moment, just as Claire did, to acknowledge Jean, who is not with us today. She is watching virtually from a home nearby here, so she is with us here in Reno. Jean has been involved in the details of planning our program today for months, and when I saw her yesterday, she just kept emphasizing that we should, without a doubt, carry on without her. Her art is for the community. It is a gift to the community, and I know she would be honored that we've all gathered here and that there's upwards of 200 people gathered virtually to celebrate her and her work. So on behalf, Jean, of the hundreds of people who've turned out for this program, we congratulate you on the opening of your retrospective exhibition and this monumental achievement in your lifetime. And I think we should just give her a round of applause. I know that many of you who are here in person have brought gifts for Jean, and if you would like us to pass them on to her, just find me or Claire sometime during the day, and we're happy to do that for you. So we will begin today with a blessing. So I'd like to invite Ms. Marie Mithlo, a NUA elder, up to the stage.
I want to thank the people that invited me to say the blessings. I will speak in my own language. Upper, it was Nimishundhaikan, my knee with the Sunakamina Chawaikan, Sikandabawa. Sikinas Oyogonamima Vanga Panda. Mekunamidita song han. Namaban had a term, Sikinakanda. Sikanamisogovich, Nimishundahaikan, Mava, Namayangaro, and Namustumidingan, Sunikam Divijina Chawaikanda. Namimbai, that's a Sundhaikan, Namahebi Stan, the Sagwan, Namindikuta, Manavoid, Namindikapa. No hingi jana me keha which is to queen oil tango mabajan many with the sonicus and I chawaikan. Obetin dos caniker, Tamindegoni. No hingi jana. It was the soko ori de was I had my neither shiguit, I mean I chawaikan. Ubahina oil is man no good. My prayer was short. What I asked is a blessing for all our people, our blessing for our Mother Earth, our blessing for the water, because water is life. And I will end my prayer with a song, which is a prayer song for our water. Bunasi Navajo Unzi, Bunasi Navajo Hinji, Bunanarovai, Bunanarovai, Bagwanane Dunzi, Hina, Bunasi Navajo Unzi, Bunasi Navajo Hinji, Bunanarovai. Bunanarovai, Bagwanane Dunzi, Hina, Bunasi Navajo Unzi, Bunasi Navajo Hinji, Bunanarovai, Bunanarovai, Bagwanane Dunzi, Hina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now I would like to welcome Stacey Montooth to the stage. Stacey is a citizen of the Walker River Paiute Nation and is the executive director of the Nevada Indian Commission, and as such, she serves as the liaison to Nevada's 27 tribes, bands, and colonies. And not only that, Stacey is an incredibly supportive friend and partner to the Nevada Museum of Art. We're always thankful for your collaboration, and she will offer a land acknowledgement today.
Again, I'm Stacey Montooth. I'm a citizen of the Walker River Paiute Nation, and I'm the executive director of the Nevada Indian Commission. The mission of my state agency is to improve the quality of life of our 27 tribal nations, bands, colonies who make Nevada their home, as well as the 62,000 plus urban Indians who make our state their second home. With programming like today's, my staff is able to make that mission. Our friends at the National Indian Education Association tell us that Native learners who are grounded in their culture do better in a traditional academic setting. They actually go on to be more civically engaged citizens. And in fact, they report an overall happiness level greater than that of average Americans. Thank you, Director Walker. Thank you, Ann Wolf. Thank you, Claire Munoz. More importantly, thank you, Judith Lamarr. Thank you for being such an amazing ambassador for Indian country. When an artist, renowned and well-respected like Judith Lamarr, secures a world-class spotlight at the Nevada Museum of Art, we all benefit. I have the honor and the obligation to remind everyone that we're on the traditional homelands of the Numa, the Nui, and the Washishishu. That is the Paiute, the Shoshone, and the Washoe people. It's important, vital, to remember the first stewards of our land and of our waterways. It is right to remember, especially in today's political climate, the rightful and the legal place of the original caretakers of the Great Basin, as well as all Indigenous people on our entire planet. Pisha. Pisha'u.
Thank you, Stacey. So before we begin our formal program, I would just like to acknowledge the many community partner organizations that have helped us to forge relationships with Native American communities in our region. On behalf of our director, David Walker, Claire Munoz, and I, as well as all of my colleagues at the Nevada Museum of Art, I'd like to thank the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, the Nevada Indian Commission, the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center and Museum, the Pyramid Lake Museum and Visitor Center, the Cultural Committee of the Washoe Tribe, the Susanville Indian Rancheria, the University of Nevada, Reno, specifically the Department of Gender, Race, and Identity, Nuwu Art and Activism Studios, and the Great Basin Native Artists Collective. I know there are representatives from all of these organizations here today and watching online. We are continually learning from you, and we're so grateful for your friendship. Thank you very much. When it comes to Jean Lamarr's exhibition specifically, there are many hands that came together to contribute to and support the show, the book, and this programming today. As I call your name, can you please raise your hand? We have a special gift for each of you, and I'd like to thank Claire and Savannah for helping me to pass those out. So Jean's installation crew, who has been with us all week, thank you for your detailed work this past week. Kyle Curtis, Kim Lawson, and I believe Radley and Brandy Davis. I haven't seen them yet here today, but if they're here. And for their contributions to the book or to today's program, Dr. Deborah Harry is in the back, Dr. Anya Montiel, Vincent Medina over here, Judith Lowry, Stacey Montooth, Fawn Douglas, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. I should have had more helpers. Where did we leave off? Judith up here, Judith Lowry, Fawn Douglas sitting next to her, Stacey Montooth in the back here, Dr. Nancy Mithlo, and Kristen Dorsey, and Tsanavi Spoonhunter. And I know we have also some contributors joining us virtually. That would be Alan Edmonds, Mary Lee Fulkerson, Archana Hortzing, Lucy Lepard, Dr. Susan Lobo, Malcolm Margolin, Raymond Potlon, and Jan Reinsflesh. I'd also like to offer some special thanks today to Melissa Malero-Moose, who's in the back, who has encouraged this exhibition for more years than I can count, and who has been involved with so many of the studio visits to Jean's. I can't thank you enough, Melissa, for everything. And I know there's one special person who is watching with Jean this morning. That's Gina Ruiz Ellenwood, Jean's niece, who has gone above and beyond for the past 5 years, but especially this past week to help realize Jean's vision for this exhibition. So Gina, we can see you. Hopefully you can see us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon. So thank you all. Let's give everyone a round of applause. So to begin our program, I would just like to start with a story about the Nevada Museum of Art that I just discovered recently, but that I think is relevant to share as we come together to celebrate Indigenous women. This year marks the 90th anniversary of the founding of the Nevada Museum of Art. This museum is not a federal or state-sponsored museum. We've never housed any anthropological or ethnographic collections. Rather, we are a nonprofit art museum that was founded by a small grassroots group of 9 women painters and their leader, Dr. James Church, in 1931. You might be asking yourself, why is she telling us this story? Well, it's because as I was researching newspaper clippings recently, I became intrigued by one of these women that I'd never heard of before. We actually know very little about her, but she was one of the founding volunteer members of this museum. Her name was Jeanette Buckles McDonald, and she went by the nickname Nettie. She was born in northeastern Montana in 1880, and she was of Assiniboine ancestry on both her maternal and paternal sides. She attended Carlisle Indian Boarding School from 1891 to 1899, and after that, she taught on the Sillet's Indian Reservation in Oregon. She eventually made her way to Reno, Nevada, where she married James McDonald, and here in Reno, as early as 1919, according to local newspaper articles, she began painting outdoors alongside those other women in that photo. That group decided in 1931 that Reno needed an art museum, and I can't begin to imagine the details of Nettie McDonald's life experience, but I certainly think we should honor this Indigenous woman today for her foresight and her early contributions to the founding of this museum. So I wanted to share that story with you today. Today, the Nevada Museum of Art is committed to exhibiting artwork by Indigenous artists from across the Americas and Australia. In fact, not only do we have Judith Lamarr's exhibition up currently, but we also have 2 exhibitions on our second floor featuring the work of Harry Fonseca and Rose B. Simpson. If you're here in person, I hope you get a chance to see those. And in the last 5 years alone, we have worked diligently to fundraise in order to purchase artworks for our permanent collection, including those by artists including Fawn Douglas, Jack McLeod, Chanupa Hanska Luger, Will Wilson, Cara Romero, Melissa Malero Moose, Dakasheen Maynor, Brian Jungen, Rick Bartow, Harry Fonseca, and Rose B. Simpson. So we're very proud of this, and we will continue to collect in this category of amazing artwork. And today I'm also pleased to announce that we have recently added 13 artworks by Judith Lamarr to our permanent collection, thanks to an incredibly generous gift from Kit Miller and the Orchard House Foundation. Kit, I know you're watching virtually. We thank you so much for this very, very amazing and generous gift to our community. So now it's my pleasure to cue up a short documentary, Purple Flower Girl, that we commissioned from Tsanavi Spoonhunter, who served as the director and producer of the film. The film will run is running downstairs in Judith Lamarr's exhibition, but this is its very first public debut. It's about 14 minutes long, and after it's finished, I'll introduce Tsanavi for a few remarks.
You see, every museum has names of every person that did that artwork, but they didn't do that with Indian people. That's how they disregarded them. There was a stereotype that we're vanished Americans. We're gone. There's no more. This is our house on Inspiration Point at the time. This is my sister, oldest sister. She got really tall. My sister Pat, and this is me right here. It was forest everywhere. It was just a lovely place to grow up. Play with sticks and rocks. It makes you very creative. I was influenced by the beauty of the mountains and the skies and all the natural things that are going on here. Well, I just wanted to show this one. This was an image of me. I was in a play when I was in junior high school, and I was the villain. He was Chicano, and I was American Indian, so they made us the villains. They typecast us, and I didn't realize it. Because of how racist they were to me here in Susanville, I was so proud of being Indian. I rode in the parade at 16 years old, and they were harassing me about being Pocahontas. I wore my buckskin, and I was bareback on a horse. I was proud. The government decided to have a relocation act in order for Indians to get off reservations. So I went to Tsanavi City College. I started taking classes at nighttime. The instructors really liked what I was doing. This one I did, Urban Indian Girls. It's an etching I did when I was in the Bay Area. This is the Golden Gate Bridge. So she has heart-shaped glasses on and wearing their regalia, wearing symbols of that their statement that they're American Indian. So it was because they were so racist to me, I had to have a political edge and information. So I moved back here to be with my mom. Now I live on the Susanville Indian Rancheria. We tease each other. We say, well, we're the better ones. We're on the upper Rancheria, and the lowlifes on the lower Rancheria. They turned it around. What they say about us. I learned how to do murals from the Chicano artists in the Bay Area. I started doing work here, started doing work around town. We had a big celebration here when we had the mural dedication. Susie Evans is like the great-grandmother of all the Lamarr family. This is what they did. The women, how they survived, they worked for white people. They would wash their clothes for them and iron them. Women would give the Indian families, fabric or scraps of material or old clothes that they didn't need anymore or want anymore. And so that's how they got shoes too. They never had to go buy shoes. We're descendants of all these people here. And they'd probably really be proud that we're still here if they knew we were still here and we didn't succumb to what was going on here and become a non-Indian. I use my artwork in a beautiful way so that I can bring people into their artwork, but yet I have a message for them. And that message has to do with how I feel our Indian people are being treated.
So this is a painting that Jean did as a student at UC Berkeley in the late 60s. It's called Going Back to the Res. It's actually a painting that the Nevada Museum of Art decided to purchase for our permanent collection. It's a special painting because it really tells the story of Jean's transformation from a young person growing up in rural Susanville to a professional artist who had found herself living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it is sort of typical of what Jean was making while she was a student at the university. Many of her professors at the time championed European abstraction, European modernism, and what we mean by that are paintings that were more abstract in style. So Jean would go to school, she would go to her classes, and she would paint the backgrounds of her paintings. very abstract, very formal in their quality. She would get great marks, she would get high grades, her professors thought highly of her work. And then she would go home and she would put what she calls the real stuff into her canvases and her artworks. And the real stuff to her were depictions of her family members, her elders, her friends, the real life that she recalled growing up in Susanville. It was the things that her professors would have considered folk art. So depicting Native people in the late 1960s in your art kind of forced you to be classified as a folk artist rather than a fine artist.
I finally found some freedom going to Berkeley because we were told to be quiet all the time, not say anything, don't question anything, don't say anything. Berkeley says question authority. Don't just take it as is.
When Jean was at UC Berkeley, she got to know many of the Chicanx artists who were working with the media, print media of posters, screen prints, as well as murals. And a lot of Jean's work from the 1960s and the 70s adopted those media because it was a way of communicating with a much broader public. Jean has always felt that art is not only for one person or not only to be shown in a museum, but that art has the potential to spread a message or to communicate something to a much broader audience. She often talks about how that's not very different than, ancient petroglyphs of her ancestors. Petroglyphs really are a type of mural making. It was a way to communicate.
I love to do paintings, but I want to share my paintings with other people. But then printmaking, at least I have multiples, so I can keep a print for myself and still other people can have them.
But Jean Lamarr really acknowledges that those printmaking media are Eurocentric as well, and so she calls them sometimes elitist art forms. And so she's actually taking those art forms and she's adopting them and she's using them to spread her own message. So in many of Jean's works, she's dealing with legacies of colonialism. And by that, in this particular piece, it's a screen print titled Me y Tu, Me and You. And on the right is a depiction of Ishi, who in popular culture became known as the last California Indian. And on the left is an indigenous person from South America. So you see in this screen print the globe, you see the Americas, and then you see this blood-stained sword with a cross that is separating North and South America. Jean is commenting on the colonial forces of Christianity or Catholicism that divided indigenous people. Following graduation at UC Berkeley, Jean was immediately involved in education. She returned to her community of Susanville, where she was born and raised. And she founded the Native American Graphics Workshop. And that's been an incredibly important part of her career and her life story. The Graphics Workshop is not just her studio, it's a place where she brings young children together, elders together, artists together from all different parts of the United States for workshops and collaboration.
Well, I just want you to watch me while I'm doing this. There's a coating on top.
She just scratches this and pulls hair and
Inks don't like weather like this. Doesn't like cold weather. So when you mix some like this and you get a little bit of this, what's it going to turn to?
green.
Yeah. See, they change colors for you. I use a lot of blue because it seems to make a lot of colors I need mixing up together. And then you can ink this one up and it'll be interesting on there. Okay, good. Well, okay, I'll get your water, your paper ready. Give her a little rag to wipe her edges. Okay, put it where that square is at. You kind of push it? Yeah, push it slowly. Yeah. Bonk. Oh, pretty. Oh, that's wild. Ta-da! It looks like the Earth and the outer space over here. Oh, your mom don't like that. Well, what I like to do is get down into their spiritual soul. What is the heart of the matter? What is their needs? What do they want? And put it out there aesthetically. And then they can learn how to grow with that. They can grow. Don't be perfectionists because we don't deal with perfection here anymore. We like to mess it all up. They're artists. They have that feeling about the flowers and the land and how beautiful it is. That gives you, that feeling of continuity in yourself. That's awesome. Okay, flip it up and I'll push it out more. Oh,
Not that bad.
oh, look at those faces. Look, I see faces in there. God, it's almost magical what you do. What in the world did you do? Oh my goodness, that's so neat looking. A lot of Indian kids are afraid to show what they can do because they've been criticized so much, so they're embarrassed about it, kind of shy about it. And I just really have to compliment them a lot to encourage them because it helps them in school. I tell them just ignore everything, do your best, but just get down to that real deep spiritual creative part of them. That's what they really need to do. Oh, that was nice. That was nice. I enjoyed what you were
Can't believe
doing.
how tall you are.
Just
in
calm
high
down.
School.
Yeah.
Gotta bring him back again.
All right, see you later.
Leave him home.
Keep over to Kitty. Kitty's scared.
We have to keep the culture going and traditions. And I try to instill pride in these kids that work with me. They have to show pride in being proud of who they are and being proud of being American Indian, being proud of what they can create and what they can do. That's what I want to try to do for them.
Tsanavi, you want to make your way up here as I introduce you. Tsanavi Spoonhunter is an independent nonfiction filmmaker and reporter. She earned her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Reynolds School of Journalism at the University of Nevada, Reno, and her Master's of Journalism degree from the Graduate School of Journalism at the University of California, Berkeley, with a focus in documentary film. Tsanavi, please join us to share a few reflections on this production.
Hello, everyone. As Jean said, I'm Tsanavi Spoonhunter, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I first wanted to begin by thanking the Nevada Museum of Art for supporting this piece, and also thank my team, my cinematographer and colorist, Kristen Collins, my editor, James Tenswan, and my composer, Connor Chi. So the film is titled Purple Flower Girl, which is a homage to Jean's Indian name, Purple Flower Girl. And as most of you know, she graduated from the University of California, Berkeley back in 1976. And when I studied during my time at UC Berkeley during my graduate program, I would always walk past Ohlone Park, and you might have seen it in the film here. And at the park, she has a mural there titled The Ohlone Journey. And I remember when I seen it, it was comforting for me, because for me as a Native person, to see Native people represented in such a colonial and oftentimes harmful space for people like myself and people like Jean, it really made me feel good to see that. And I never knew it at the time that it was her. And so when Anne asked me to make this film, I learned of that, and I was just so honored to be able to capture a little glimpse into Jean's life through the film here. And so, sorry, I keep looking at my notes here. She seeks to really inspire and inform people through her art, and that's something that I hope to honor in my art as well. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the film, Purple Flower Girl.
Thanks, Tsanavi. So we're going to start the first program, but before I do that, I thought I would just share a few images of Jean's exhibition, because there are so many people joining us virtually, and if you were here in person last night, you know how many people were in the gallery. So just a quick little virtual walkthrough of her show so that we can kind of orient ourselves. This is her retrospective exhibition. It includes over 100 artworks, over 50 years of Jean's creative output. It's our largest feature gallery, so 7,000 square feet of exhibition space dedicated to the show. We start by telling the story of Jean's roots in Susanville, her time at UC Berkeley, and in the San Francisco Bay Area. Again, some of her murals that she made while living in the San Francisco Bay Area, this one from the Intertribal Friendship House on loan from them. Some of her most iconic screen prints that we see and recognize. When we see them, we know that's Jean Lamarr. We tell the stories of her murals, some of the sketches, the preparatory sketches for specifically the Ohlone mural. This incredible, magnificent wall full of paintings that are directional. If you were standing in Susanville and looking north, south, east, and west, these are the landscapes, the sacred places that Jean cherishes so much. Jean's involvement with the bear dance in Janesville for many, many years, some films that she made with Frank Lapina, and all of the posters that she created in support of the bear dance. So many works, installations that we recreated, double visions that questions the colonial narrative of Christopher Columbus's discovery of the Americas. Political work that she created, began to work more intensely with politics and America's colonial history while teaching in Santa Fe at the Institute of American Indian Arts. Jean loves humor. She is a trickster herself. This is Ms. Coyote. I think the title of this is Miss Coyote Invites Junipero Sarah over for dinner. You can see Miss Coyote's ready for him. This is a fun piece. But Jean does say that humor does help to talk about difficult subjects and brings people together. And I can assure you that whenever you're with Jean, there's lots of laughter involved. We tell the story of Jean's founding of the Native American Graphic Workshop in Susanville. These are some of her printmaking tools. And of course, her ongoing commitment to dismantling stereotypes of Native American women. Her series Cover Girl is by now iconic. I remember when Melissa told me that's the piece, that's the poster I had on my wall growing up, and I just idolized Jean. And so many of these original screen prints are up on view right now, as well as this installation called Princess Pale Moon, which is an interactive piece. And then her most recent sculpture, finished and realized just this week. It's a sweat in honor of healing the traumas of boarding school legacies. And what she's done is she's created this sweat, and with great thanks to the Stewart Indian School Museum as well as other boarding schools, she's acquired all of these historic photographs of children that she has included on this sweat to begin the healing and conversation needed to move forward as we consider America's boarding school past. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I hope you get to see the exhibition in person. But since Jean is not with us, we do have Dr. Anya Montiel with us, who is going to interview Jean today, and we're so appreciative of you being so flexible. We have decided to have Anya moderate a conversation with 3 of Jean's closest friends. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Montiel, and I'm going to have Judith and Vincent and Dr. Harry come up on stage as I'm introducing all of you, and will join us on the stage. So Dr. Anya Montiel is a curator at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Previously, she was the curator of American and Native American women's art and craft through the Smithsonian's American Women's History Initiative. She received her master's and PhD in American Studies from Yale University and her bachelor's in Native American Studies and Anthropology from the University of California at Davis. She's written for American Indian Magazine, Art in America, First American Art Magazine, and the Oxford Handbook of American Indian History, as well as many exhibition essays at different museums. So Anya, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to now ask Judith Lamarr to come up. Judith is an artist who lives in Nevada City, California, and she's enrolled in the Pit River Tribe, and she's also a cousin of Jean's, and we look forward to hearing your stories today. Dr. Deborah Harry, come on and join us. Dr. Harry is an associate professor in the Department of Gender, Race, and Identity at the University of Nevada, Reno. She is Numu, Northern Paiute from Pyramid Lake, Nevada. And finally, Vincent Medina is an Ohlone Indigenous rights, language, and food activist. He's a member of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and co-founder of Cafe Ohlone, an Ohlone restaurant in Berkeley, California, and a longtime friend of Jean's. So thank you all so much for being here with us. We're going to have Jean as a part of the conversation as well. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, we're not quite sure if we should all just talk through our masks, probably the safest thing. Well, good day, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. It is such an honor to be here. The Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian has works by Judith Lamarr in the permanent collection, and so we give our utmost congratulations to her. It is wonderful to see the show and to also all of us be here to celebrate her wonderful works. So I have the pleasure of interviewing people who know her well. So first, I would like to ask Judith a question. She's also an artist, but also she has family ties to Jean. So if you would help, especially our Zoom audience, bring sort of like Susanville, California into context, and also, the Native community there, but then also Susanville.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, my father was born and raised in Susanville. He was actually born in Milford, but from the Mountain Maidu tribe and the Pit River tribe, both Hamaui and Atsugui bands. And so I'm related to Jean through our tribal affiliation to the Pit Rivers, but and I'm enrolled with the Pit River Nation because when I was younger, when I was born, the Maidu people were not recognized. So we're changing all that as we go along, right? We're getting tribes we recognize and back in the fold again. Susanville is remote. It's always relied on since the contact time, logging, ranching. So the Maidu people up there, they worked into that pretty well. They had very hard times. But for instance, where I live in Nevada City, the Nisenan people, they were at the dead center of the gold rush. They were pretty much annihilated within 2 years, 9,000 to 10,000 people. But in Susanville, Indian people have always had a sort of an uneasy relationship with the town and the sort of colonial descendants because there's just never really been a conversation that respected the tribes enough. And a few years ago when the gaming situation happened and they got a casino, I think it kind of made it worse. And Jean did grow up in an atmosphere of feeling like a second-class citizen. My own father grew up in that atmosphere, and in his senior year, he did 2 years of senior year. He graduated early out of Sherman Indian Institute. And when he got back to Susanville, the coach of the high school saw him in town and asked him to do another year of football and in school. Would you do another senior year if you play on my team? And so Dad agreed. And what he told me was that he was a top athlete along with his cousin, but during lunchtime, they had their flapjacks and beans rolled up cold for their lunch, and they would go down and sit in the bleachers because the other boys, the boys from the good families in town, so to speak, had really nice lunch boxes, and they all hung out together. And my dad and his cousin Johnny were beloved by their team members, really loved them on the field, but they were never invited to their homes. And so this is, Jean came a generation later, went through the 50s and 60s, and you can see how it affected her, how it disillusioned her. But where she found herself was in the power of art, and it is such a healing thing. And watching her share that with people after what she was deprived of so much respect as a youngster, how she went out and captured that for herself. And not only that, shared it with me. I came along after Jean. I went to college late. I decided to have kids first. That was smart, right? So when I got out of college, she called me one day and said, "Where's your slides? Are you here?" I said, "You're at Dad's house?" And I said, "Yes, I'm. Get up to my house right now." And this is, when Jean tells you to move, you need no other. And so I went up, and that's when she introduced me to Teresa Harlan. There are also a lot of intertribal problems in Susanville because we've got 4 tribes that were pushed into the same land space. We've all seen this tactic before in other tribal nations, right? But again, her work sort of transcends all of that. And what really strikes me about her early work is the love she has for the people. And so I think that's what sustained her through the kind of treatment that Indian people got from in traditional times. I think she's made it a lot better for a lot of us, and especially me. I owe her so much. If I had a sister, but she's already got so many sisters, she doesn't need another one. But she recently called me sister, and that was one of the nicest things because I never had one before. So I just love her that much.
Judith. Thank you so much. I just wanted people to also understand how important it is, especially the work that she's doing, to have that Indigenous presence back where this is all, Indigenous land, but how important it is for everyone to see that and really to have those images everywhere. Dr. Harry, I would like to ask you about, Jean's work is also so wonderful about really her love of the land and how she is, through that art, showing the landscape, but also she has this way of also making people confront what they have done to the land. And I know that your work with biocolonialism really talks about the effects of that. And so I don't know if maybe you have a certain favorite work or something that you want to sort of share about how she has been able to really show her love of the land.
Is it on? Great. Okay, thank you. Let me just introduce myself real quickly in my own language. Pisha Tabino, Nu Deborah Harry Minania, Nu Koyoi Tukara, Nu Koyoi Pat. Good day, everybody. My name is Deborah Harry. I'm from a place called Pyramid Lake. And Jean's relatives are also from Pyramid Lake as well as from Susanville. So she has ties to my home. Absolutely, Jean's art reflects place, right? It reflects her connection to our lands, our landscape, our history, our historical ties to these places, our ancestors. So you see our ancestors in her paintings as well as our contemporary community members, and then also future generations. So, we're land-based people. We come from land-based societies, and so connection to place is central to who we are as Indigenous peoples. I think if you think about, oh, and I should say, good morning, Jean. We really miss you. I texted her last night and said a party's not a party without her, without her here. and we really missed you, and we hope that we will get a chance to visit with you at some point really, really soon. But I think, you know, with Jean's artwork, she can not only give you the beauty of the land and the richness of the colors, that deep blue, as she mentioned, that the purples and all of those colors that bring out this incredible, you know, beauty in her work. But then you start to look at lace. But then you start to look closer, and you see the fences, the barbed wire, the military jets flying across the landscape. You see the skulls in the ground. And so what she does is she combines this incredibly creative work and beautiful work, and then makes this hard-hitting statement. Hard-hitting statements about colonial violence. Hard-hitting statements about sexual violence against Indigenous women, the colonial gaze, that history of militarization and removal from our lands. If you look at her plan for this particular exhibition of her work, the series of events take on hard issues like boarding schools, like repatriation, and those are still coming up. And then, of course, her focus today is around Indigenous feminisms and Indigenous contributions to art. And I think that's so powerful. I would just say that, you know, it reflects on her fierce nature as a warrior woman, despite all of the oppression, all of the marginalization that she's experienced, and that many of us continue to experience, particularly in rural places in this country, that she fights back, and through that fight back, through that pushback, she inspires others, and she's a trailblazer in that sense.
Thank you so much. And Vincent, I was born and raised in San Francisco, and you know, growing up there, there would be all these urban Indian events for kids, and so we would always go all across the Bay Area to check out fun events, and we would often go to Berkeley. Berkeley was a place, I think they were also hoping that we would go to college. So that was another thing, is that they wanted us close to Berkeley, and they wanted us to meet college students, so hope that, you know, we would go to college. And so I remember, you know, going to see the Ohlone mural, and at that time, I will say, I didn't know that Jean had done it. And it was just so wonderful, because murals are so powerful. And I try to explain to people that they don't charge admission. So you can see a mural at any time. And also 24 hours a day, you can go visit. It's not that the place is closed and it's behind, you know, inside a building. So it was just so powerful for me, you know, as a young person, to see that mural and to really have, you know, the artistry, and to know that a Native artist was the one behind that. And so I was hoping that for you, you could share Jean's collaboration with other Ohlone partners, and also I know that we have images of all sides of the mural. So if there are certain people in the mural that you want to like point out, please do. So let me.
Thank you. I'd like to also start by introducing myself in my family's language, Chochenyo, which is the native language of the East Bay, including Berkeley. Orshetuhi hemmenya, kanakrakat Vincent Medina, at kana koloniak at miwak taresh, kanamuek maknanat aksuyakma aye, kanamishka rashu makam, kanamishtashu makam. Hello to you all. I'm grateful to be on this panel with some very inspirational people. And this mural, it represents a great deal to me. And also, we recognize our Auntie Jean, who is watching from her home right now, and we want to acknowledge her, all the beauty that she creates. The Ohlone mural that's in Berkeley, it means a great deal to my family, to my community. And I'd like to share a short story about how I got to see this mural when I was a child. My grandmother, she worked hard at the UC Berkeley Library. That was her job. And she retired, and when she retired, she was invited to dinner at the Chancellor's house with all the retirees. My grandma, she invited me to go with her. I was just a kid. I was maybe 11, 12 years old. But before she went to that dinner, she wanted to make sure that she stopped to see that mural that just was unveiled. I remember that my grandma, she stopped caring about going to the Chancellor's dinner because her first priority was seeing this mural. And it was starting to get dark, and we were driving around, and if you've ever seen this mural, it's tucked away at a side of Ohlone Park that is a little bit less accessible than the other sides. And we were looking for it, driving around, and then finally we saw that mural that was there. My grandma got out, I remember, and she just was so quiet, and I was wondering almost if there was something wrong. I didn't know, because I never saw her that quiet before. And she just walked around the mural and looked out all four sides of it. And then finally she started talking. She started to point to all these different faces on the mural. And she started to tell me the names of who those people are. She would say, "There's Auntie Jenny." Auntie Jenny is the grandmother of Cousin Tina right here, who's over here back with us. She would say, "There's Uncle Hank. There's Cousin Michael. There's Cousin Moni." Also, I want to acknowledge Auntie Joanne as well, who's an East Bay Ohlone woman too. Our family, seeing them painted on this mural that's here, it represents a great deal, because in Berkeley and in the East Bay, for those of you who've been there, which I'm sure many of you have, it's an urban place. And even though our family has never left the East Bay, you don't see a lot of markers that are out there that remind that we're still here, and about how beautiful our culture is, and how these things kept continuing, even if it meant they continued quietly in order to keep our people safe. I remember that when I saw that mural the first time, I felt connected, and it made me feel a lot of pride when I was a kid, because I got to see how we were depicted in a way that was elegant, that was with dignity, that looked like the pictures that we see at home. And I remember my grandma told me right then, all those photos, they're on Nana's mantle place. Our great-grandmother, Mary Archuleta, who was born on the old Pleasanton Rancheria. Our family lost that federal recognition that my great-grandmother was born into, that our great-grandmother was born into. But instead of giving up, they still kept going on, finding ways to keep the culture alive and never leaving our home. When we see these things, and with the way that Auntie Jean consults, she doesn't just paint things for the sake of painting, but she does it for intention. She reaches out to people. She gets invested with the community. She develops personal relationships. And she does all these things as an act of love for our Indian people. When we met her, when I was working at Heyday Books some time ago, I remember that immediately we just fell in love with her. She started calling us nephews, and we started calling her auntie. And then right away, you were reminded about how our people across California and going into this part of Nevada as well, how we're all connected in these dynamic ways, about how those boundaries that people try to place upon us, how those things are artificial, because in those old days, our people knew each other. They would go through ceremony together to the roundhouse. They were dancing together, trading together. And when we can see each other like this, have that respect, it renews those connections, and we grow stronger together as people. The side right here of the mural is depicting the Rancheria period. The woman on the top left corner with that beautiful headscarf on, that's Angela de los Colos. 100 years ago, she saved our language. She recorded as much as she could remember with John Harrington about our language, and because of her work, Chochenyo's spoken again. and children are growing up with our language for the first time in about 70 years. On the far right side, that's an image of the woman with the checkered skirt, and then right behind her, that's Auntie Jenny and Uncle Ben, also Tina's grandfather as well. Uncle Hank right there, who remembers stories about the beginning of the worlds, when the world was flooded except for the two peaks of Tuxtlac, Mount Diablo. Uncle Hank, he's the only member of our family today that's still a part of the federally recognized Verona Band of Alameda County. And Uncle Hank, he's 98 years old. Is that right, Cousin Tina? 99, excuse me. And he's somebody that also keeps the culture going. All these people here are heroes. And if you could skip to one of the other slides. This is showing an Ohlone basket with olive ella beads of our people walking into the future. All of these sides here, they depict our creation, they depict the beauty of the roundhouses, they depict the regalia, they show all of these things that we still recognize today and that we want to see grow stronger in our family. One small thing I want to notice that I didn't know until we spoke with Auntie Jean is that right behind us, the girl that's right there, that's looking back with all of those, with the flower crowns and the clamshell beads. I didn't know this, but Auntie Jean told us that she's looking, and that's when the Spanish were first coming into the East Bay. I never knew that. I always thought that it was depicting the roundhouse and ceremony happening only, and it is, but she's also there seeing about what was coming as well. But she doesn't stop there, Auntie Jean. She doesn't just stop with what happened with colonization. She focuses on the continuity and also about how things kept going and how they're still here today. So Auntie Jean is a hero. We have so much love and so much respect for her. And this mural, every time we're in Berkeley, we drive by, make sure there's no graffiti on it, make sure it's looking good, make sure that we have our lunches around it, because we're there with our family. And she brought some visibility for our people into our urban homeland, and we are always grateful to her for what she does. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was hoping that Judith could also sort of share about the wonderful art worlds that we used to have. I mean, I remember, American Indian contemporary arts, Pacific Western traders, and, maybe Frank Lapina would have something happening, in Sacramento, or the Gorman Museum at Davis, and there was just so much going on. So I don't know if you have like a group show, memory that you want to share, or something about, those days.
Yeah, that was a great time. The Arts Council was really roaring. That's before it took a nosedive for a while. Everybody remembers that. And it's coming back, the California Arts Council. But Jean also initiated a lot of programs on her own, and we did share a lot of exhibition space, and it was a lot of fun, and it was challenging. But what was really fun was when she did the graphic workshop, and she would have 5 women, Native women, and not necessarily, in fact, if you weren't a printmaker, that was good. So they were weavers, painters, sculptors, writers, and she brought us to her studio, which you saw in the film, and first she would show us techniques. She'd run us through a day of, how you actually create a print. Then she'd show works from her former students that she had, or people that had been in her workshops. And what I loved at the end of all of that, she'd look at us and say, all right, now go make a bunch of mistakes. And I think that her generous spirit of giving you permission to make mistakes, giving you permission to explore. And she did that workshop for 5 years. She managed to curate a beautiful exhibit from all of them, and all 5 workshops, and 5 women per workshop, so that was a lot of women. And for me personally, she pulled something out of me I didn't know I had, and I think we all felt that. We reached a new level. And also just her philosophy of how to make art and to make it meaningful and to share it. So I would love to get back into another workshop with her. I really, really would. Jean, are you listening? I know you are. And it was funny because, you know, she had gave us a stipend. She was able to get us a little bit of money. And one night a week, one of us would cook dinner. And we all had to bring certain things. We all had to bring our own toilet paper. You know, that's so practical. I mean, when you think about it, you know, you could run out with 5 women, extra women in the house. And so we all arrived with our, you know, with our supplies. And I remember the last night when Kathleen Smith, because she was sitting with us, Elle Frank, Denise Davis, forget who else. It was just a blast. But the last night, there was this beautiful star shower. And the next day, Kathleen got up and made a beautiful image of our star shower that we all sat out in the lawn at night and looked. And when you go to Susanville, what she has up there is a night sky that's just peppered with stars. It's where I live in Nevada City, you don't see much of the stars anymore because there's so much light pollution. So that was a very magical time. And I think every time I've been around Jean, involved in some project, that magic occurs again. And it is because of her. And her many years of experiencing, honing her craft, defining her intent and purpose, and passing it on to us. It's a great, generous gift.
Yes, and I'm so happy that we also got to watch that documentary because there's nothing more exciting than being in an artist's home and seeing all the art supplies and working with the youth. So yeah, we definitely need more of those workshops happening. And I was wondering if someone could share about her humor because, you know, as a curator, that's what I love about her art is that she is dealing with sometimes very serious topics, but she has this beautiful way of using humor to kind of get people's attention, and then she educates them. And so I don't know if someone wants to share about that humor.
I can do it. Oh. Just as a real quick quote, she once said, "I don't make art to please tourists. I am not an Indian Pollyanna." You want to try one? You got a funny story?
There's 2 things that come to mind that really reflect her humor. The last time that she came to the Bay Area, one of the wonderful things that we got to do was go to the Oakland Coliseum Flea Market with Auntie Jean. And at the Oakland Coliseum Flea Market, which I've gone to my entire life, and I really like flea markets, but I never saw a flea market the way that I did that day, where she would go into every little, these obscure stands, where they would have, you know, just like a lot of things that were just mismatched, and nothing was, it was a lot of used things, and she was looking for things to dress up Miss Coyote with. So she stopped and she bought long press-on eyelashes. She got the handcuffs there. She got the stilettos that Miss Coyote's wearing. She got there. And as we were there, you just see her mind work and how brilliant she is about how you could look through an area that might not seem to have necessarily like a lot of the finest things in some of these stalls. But she would just get such fine things that had so much intention because only the best goes into her artwork. And her artwork is the best as well. She's so skilled. The other thing that I think that comes to mind is we always are raised, of course, to show a lot of respect to our elders. I know that we're all raised that way. But Louis and myself, we accidentally called Auntie Jean an elder, and she said, "I'm not an elder. I'm an old chick." So it reminds us of her humor, of how funny she is. And one other thing that I wanted to add to this is at the flea market, there was a Catholic stand that was there, and she was looking for saints to add to this to Miss Coyote. And she got into this long conversation there was a man who was working the stall, and the only depiction of anybody who looked like us, who was brown, was the little devil at St. Michael's feet. And she was telling him about how it should be reversed, and about how brown people shouldn't be depicted to be the devil at all. And in the end, the man ended up agreeing with her as well. So little bits of that, shopping around with her and being with her, it's always so much fun.
Thank you. And when I interviewed her on the phone, she also told me that too, that she's not an elder, she's an old chick. So I love that. And I was also, when I spent time with her on the phone, the immense love that she had for her husband, and I don't know if someone wants to share about that,
Well, I'll go first. DeRoy Spencer, where are you, Spencer? Right? DeRoy Spencer was a decent, good man. He was her rock, and this was a really wonderful marriage to witness. Jean could get very worked up over some of her exhibits. Everybody who's done this kind of work knows how it gets. And I one time said, Spencer, you're so patient. And he goes, well, she's the star. She's the star. And indeed, he was her constant help. He understood her probably better than anybody, and we all miss him so much. But the funny story I have one day was we were talking, and I said something about the Navajo, and Jean said, it's not Navajo, it's Navajo. And I always heard it was Navajo, and I always pronounced it that way. She said, no, it's Navajo. I said, okay, Spencer, sitting across the room all quiet. Spencer, you settle this. Is it Navajo or is it Navajo? And he goes, it's Dene.
Yes, I'm sure. There's always Dene out there. So I'm sure there are a bunch of them nodding. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. And Dr. Harry, I was wondering also with your work with Indigenous Feminisms, if you could also talk about the portrayal of women in her art, because I remember the first time I saw urban Indian girls, and it just, everything was in that, and everything that I knew growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and just that wonderful respect that she portrays in her art.
Sure. I've known Jean throughout the years, but around 1990, we reconnected in a pretty close way because at that point she was teaching at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and I was applying for a job there. And I had been involved in philanthropy for a few years with the Seventh Generation Fund, and previous to that, the Tribal Sovereignty Program. And so I was putting in for a position in the development office, and so I went down there. And that time, Jean was staying in a trailer, and she was a travel trailer. So she said instead of paying rent and giving her money away, she was going to invest it. And when she gets to come home, she'll have a trailer to bring home. I thought that was so smart. So we were visiting, and I went and did my interview, and then I came back and said, well, I'm done now. I've got to go to the airport. And went down to the airport and was sitting there waiting for my flight. And I get a page, Deborah Harry, please answer the intercom or whatever. And so I answered it, and the development office was calling me back to Santa Fe. And I talked to Jean. She says, yes, I told him. I said, what? You let her go? How could you let her go? Do you know what you just did? And so she put them in a panic, and they called me and brought me back. And then that was my first professional job, I think, in a major institution, was because of Jean. But I got to hang out with her a bit. She helped me get my footing in Santa Fe. But in Santa Fe, she was there with other giants, other artists, Linda Lomhoftua, and that was kind of her buddy, and you'd see them, around town in these different restaurants and bars or whatever, clubs, whatever. They're all having a great time, laughing, and they fill the space, right? They take the space. But what they were doing in Santa Fe as well was really pushing back against how people in the art scene were trying to define what is Indigenous art, you know. And they were just pushing back. Jack was a part of that scene as well, you know. And, you know, such leadership, but always with this humor and this laughter and, you know, just, you know, I guess laughter is the medicine, you know, to give us the strength to keep dealing with these hard issues that just don't seem to go away. They are always there. And so we can't just ignore them. You just shine a big flashlight on them. And that's what she does with her artwork. But always with such love. And I guess that's what's reflected with, you know, what she does with her time. She comes home and she does the workshops for the community. She does the workshops for the children. She does the workshops and training with the women. And that's where her heart is nurturing that next generation of artists, of people who are going to tap into their creative side to take their place in the Indigenous world and to make their mark in the world that like she has. And it's you know, it's such a powerful experience. Maybe there's even hope for me to be an artist. If I can get into your workshop, Jean.
No. Well, unfortunately, due to time constraints, we don't have time for a Q&A. But I would like to just send my thanks to Judith Lamarr for bringing us all together and for sharing. Also, many thanks to our panelists, Vincent Medina, Dr. Deborah Harry, and Judith Lowry for sharing with us. I think we can all feel just so much love in the room for Jean right now. So thank you all, and I believe it is now time for a break. So thank you.
I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It's hard to pull yourself away from the beautiful outdoors and the Sierra that we have such on a beautiful day, but if everyone could start to take their seats. So welcome back. I would like to introduce our next session, which is a presentation between Dr. Nancy Marie Mithlo and Kristen Dorsey. I'm going to go ahead and introduce both of them first, and then Dr. Mithlo will speak first, followed by Kristen. Nancy Marie Mithlo, who is Chiricahua Apache, is a professor of gender studies and core faculty with the American Indian Studies Interdepartmental Program at the University of California, Los Angeles. Mithlo's curatorial work has resulted in 9 exhibits at the Venice Biennale. A lifelong educator, Mithlo has taught at the University of New Mexico, the Institute of American Indian Arts, the Santa Fe Community College, Smith College, California Institute of the Arts, Occidental College, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Her 2020 book, Knowing Native Arts, was published by the University of Nebraska Press. Mithlo's research addresses the pressing need for accurate and sensitive information for and about American Indian communities using institutional critique, curatorial strategies, and art analysis. She is concerned with the unequal application of resources in the arts and culture field and the outmoded theoretical frames of analysis that tend to describe but fail to analyze the wealth of knowledge inherent in Native arts production and circulation. So we look forward to hearing from you very soon. I'm going to go ahead and also introduce Kristen Dorsey of the Chickasaw Nation, who is a doctoral student in the Department of Gender Studies at UCLA. For most of her professional life, Dorsey was a jeweler and a sculptor, exhibiting her work at museums nationally, including the Smithsonian, the Peabody Essex Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts, and others. Her work is in the permanent collections of the Mississippi Museum of Art and across the Chickasaw Nation. It was through her art practice that she found her passion for curation. She collaborated with fellow Chickasaw artists to develop the traveling exhibition, Visual Voices, Contemporary Chickasaw Art, and she also co-curated the exhibit Matriarchs. Dorsey has also served on the El Segundo Arts and Culture Committee. So we'll go ahead and start with Dr. Mithlo. Welcome.
I'm tall. Wow. Hello, everyone. This has been such an amazing event, and I just want to start by saying, Jean, wherever you are, our heart goes with you. I'm thrilled that when you asked me to come share about your work with this community, I was so honored. And yeah, let me start by saying the last panel was remarkable. Thank you, everyone who spoke. I wanted to thank the folks here, the good folks at the museum, especially Anne and Claire and Pamela. Thank you for all of your efforts to get us here and to host us and to organize things in such a beautiful way. Last night's opening was just so heartfelt. It put, I think, a good feeling on all of us, and I think we carried that through to today as well. I'm happy to be back in Reno. I was here for an exhibit in 2019 of Deanne Whitehawk's work at the Lilly Gallery down the road, the University of Nevada, Reno. And when I heard about Jean's exhibit, I thought, what is going on in Reno? We've got all these one-woman art shows, and now we've got 1, 2, so we're ready for a third. Okay, start curating the next exhibit here for Native women in the arts. I'm gonna start. I wanted to start with bell hooks. So I'm a professor, and you'll note from our presentation that we're going to dig in a lot to education. And as you may know, bell hooks is the legendary Black feminist scholar. She recently passed on. And I'm using her 1992 publication, Black Looks, Race and Representation. This work is just as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. And I wanted to start with this quote. This gave my students kind of a pause, but I think it's something good to work with and work together on. Decolonization can only be complete when it is understood as a complex process that involves both the colonizer and the colonized. So 30 years later, much of what Hooks describes as, and she wanted this to be all together. She would always say this, imperialist white supremacist heteropatriarchy, that was her catchphrase, continues. And it's often, you see it in visual culture, and it's this promise of inclusivity that seems kind of ever elusive. So this frame of the colonizer and the colonized gave my UCLA students a lot to think about, and you're gonna see this kind of work in today's presentation. This concern with education, this concern with generations. And one of the premises that I want to forward is that what has casually been termed political is basically educational point blank. The political, when examined with the benefit of hindsight, was all along really just simple education. And I'm not saying that the branding of political for our Native artists is incorrect, simply that it is Western in nature, and it may unnecessarily limit the scope of interpretive powers, our superpowers as Indigenous communities that are available to us, especially today as we celebrate this vast legacy of one of our mothers of Native printmaking, Judith Lamarr. So I'm suggesting that we open up these narrow frames of reference and resituate the analysis from an Indigenous standpoint. This is our naming, and this is our claiming. So this idea of generosity and generations is a place that I really want to kind of start with and examine. I'm from Oklahoma. I am a member of the Fort Sill, Chiricahua, Warm Springs Apache tribe. We're both in Oklahoma and in New Mexico. And when we have our annual, we call them doings, around Columbus Day weekend, we host hundreds of people. And my grandmother, Lavina, who is Comanche, would always call on me to go take people who you could see had come to the dance and they didn't quite know their place, right? They're kind of standing on the edges, they're a little shy, and Grandma would always say, go get them, bring them in, feed them, talk to them, explain things to them. And so I think that spirit of generosity is what I'm going to be forwarding today. And this is really important in terms of Jean's legacy, of course. So bringing Kristen Dorsey with me today was a request I made of the museum. I said, I can only come if I'm bringing a student with me. And this is part of what I teach, American Indian curatorial practice. It's long-term. It's mutually meaningful. it's reciprocal, and it has mentorship. And this is work that we all do all the time. I'm just naming it today. And I'm trying to enact this today so that I'm not the expert. I'm a teacher, right? I'm working with communities, and I'm bringing my student with me. So thank you to the museum for allowing us to kind of move into your space and do things in this way. I'm going to learn how to use this thing in just a minute. Yes. 30 years ago, in 1991, I interviewed Jean in Santa Fe, New Mexico as a component of my dissertation research. I was a student at Stanford University. At the time, Jean was a professor of printmaking. I was also a former student. I went to the IA as a museum studies student in the 1980s. During the same time, a massively talented Paiute Washoe artist named Carmen Meaden was a sculpture student. Carmen graduated with an IAIA Fine Arts Certificate in Sculpture in 1991. She passed in 1995 at a very young age. Carmen had done remarkable things. She had worked for the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. She'd worked for the Pawnee tribe in Oklahoma. She'd worked in Indian child welfare. And at the time I met her, she was welding massive steel sculptures with a disability. And I wanted to share these two quotes from Carmen. She said, "Sometimes you got to work harder to accomplish something, then you appreciate it more. I think I'm a whole lot better person than I would have been if I would have been complete with my hands." And so it's really taught me to look past surface. I even stay away from people that really think they're it. I don't like that in people. If someone says, "Oh, you're beautiful," well, that's fine, but tell me I'm smart, that I have something to offer this world. Tell me that I'm assertive, that I have a contribution to make, that I'm intelligent. That quote stayed with me really my whole professional career, this quote from Carmen. So Carmen was my age, and I think had she lived, she would be here with us today. So I want to reach to my student who's going to join us, and I also want to reach back to someone who's not here with us today, who has walked on. And it's in her memory that I wanted to announce I've made a donation to the Great Basin Native artist in Carmen's honor. Thank you so much, Melissa Malero-Moose, for the very important work that you're doing. And I hope this small gesture can carry Carmen's legacy forward. Thank you. This is a piece just to give you an idea of the massive scale of Carmen's work. This one is Tradition Prevails. She was fierce, and Don Chunstady, who was her sculpture professor, had this quote at the time that right after she passed, where he said that she's fierce, she's not afraid, and she'll do anything. And I just think that having her and that spirit here today is really special and adds to today. Let me start with Jean. Hi, Jean. I didn't forget about you. I love these quotes. All races should know how life was for us. And then I'm also looking at collage as a tool of empowerment. And I want to start with something that Jean said to me just recently, a week ago. She said, "I don't do booth well." I thought that was classic Jean Lamarr. So Jean situates her work, printmaking, installation, collage, and murals, primarily in these political contexts. She believes strongly in the empowerment of making art for the masses. These are all things that you've heard from folks today. And what I'm going to be forwarding is this idea of this political can also be theoretical. It's more accurately, I think, described as theory building. And then secondly, and Anne, you talked about this, I think, just so expertly, the idea of how her collage work was her signature style because she wasn't allowed to actually do the kind of work that she wanted to, right? And this is a quote from an interview I did with Jean when I was a graduate student in 1991, where she says, "You know, to me, it was a finished piece because it was abstract, color-filled, and after I go through the critique, I'd go back home and lay the rest of the stuff, the collage. That's how I ended up working from then on." So I'm forwarding this idea of collage as empowerment. This is the book that Jean's interviews ended up in, Our Indian Princess. That's a Roxanne Swinsel piece on the cover, Rose's mommy. And what I wanted to talk about here is Jean and her status in terms of gender. So gender was working kind of doubly against Jean at this period that I was doing interviews with her. On the one hand, she felt like when she was at Berkeley, her male professors wouldn't give her any attention. And she's got this wonderful quote about how the guys would go off in a dark room, they would hear this strange woman's voice in there, Jean would go in there, she'd follow them in there, and she would be called crazy lady, right? So there's a gender bias that's happening there. But then she also felt like, because she was a Native woman doing political work, that she wasn't invited to Native women's art shows. Okay, so this is 30 years ago, guys, right? She was alienated from both of those frames of reference. And this is part of me trying to push back just kind of an easy labeling of political and saying she wanted people to know how things were, right? She's basically giving history lessons, right? She's basically digging in and saying, you've got to know these histories. I was completely wowed when I was going through Jean's records to find out that she had been featured in the Museum of Modern Art in 1988. And if you look at this slide, I just want to point out who else is like exhibiting with her. Andy Warhol is in that list. Bruce Nauman is in that list. This was a very important show. And this is the piece that she exhibited here, is on display here in the galleries. The important thing that I want to say about this work is that the curator for this show, Deborah Y., excellent curator, she made a wonderful choice with Jean being in the show, but she described this work by saying, this exhibit was groundbreaking as it was the first to look at the social and political themes that were present in the 1960s art. So she saw Jean's work in this fashion. In her parallel groupings of different generations, Lamarr compares the near mythic concept of the Indian that is fixed in the popular imagination with the reality of the contemporary Indian, whose very existence comes as a surprise to many. This idea of the tradition and modern is one of the parts of our native arts field that has continued to hamper us being able to get into the nuances, right? To really talk about the details. And I would say there's more going on here. It's more of a juxtaposition, right? I wanted to quote Shan Goshorn, who's another amazing Native woman artist who passed on way too soon. She says, unlike many non-natives who view lineage with a line, with no connection from one end to another, we see ourselves as belonging to a spiral, with ancestors and descendants ever widening, almost touching, illustrating the impact and relationship our generations have upon each other. So this to me is not like a juxtaposition, right? Then and now, us and them. It really is the same. It's tribal leaders historically, tribal leaders contemporarily. And if we can start to move that frame, one of the vocabulary words that I would use with my students is coeval, right? Native people are living in the same place, in the same communities, and we just need to start recognizing that more. I'm going to end and pass it off to Kristen with just one more image. This is from the cover girl, and if you note, the name of our talk is Naming and Reclaiming. So Jean did something really important. Thank you, Jean, wherever you are, for this piece. I started looking more at who this woman was in this collage piece. Now, this is classic Jean Lamarr. You see the purple, right? You see the commodity. You see a Native woman. You see that Native woman, it's a historical picture. But who is that Native woman, right? The more I look, this is a woman of my tribe. There were only 21 Chiricahua people that came to, it's basically the Trans-Mississippi International Exposition, Omaha, Nebraska, 1898. F.A. Reinhardt was the photographer for this. And as I look at this and I unpack this, and thank you, Jean, you know, I've had both of my daughters have a coming of age ceremony. I've sponsored this kind of dress before. I understand what those bugles mean. I understand what the necklaces mean. And when I look at this dear girl, I think about my nieces. I think about my daughters. I think about my cousins. This could be them today. So here's a girl, she's 13 in this photograph, right? She's being exhibited as if she is an object and basically a national pavilion with hundreds of other Native people. It's hot, it's in the summertime, and she was born, on top of all of that, as a prisoner of war. So did she have her ceremony or not? We don't know. We don't know anything about her story. But Jean, you using this image and bringing it to the fore in your work has led to a whole new door of research for myself, for my family, for my students, because I want to know more about her, right? I want to know what happened in her life. I want to know what brought her to Nebraska. So, Jean, you are making us all think, and you continue to challenge us. And I bring these tensions into the classroom because of you, because of what you have taught me. So I'm very grateful again to share with you today. And we're going to move on to Kristen, who's going to keep talking about the cover girls.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm a little shorter. Chokma shki, chokma chin chokma, sahuth chifoa, Kristen Dorsey, chikasha saya, koni homa in kanomar. Chokma shki, Nancy, so much for bringing me here to be with all of you today, plucking me from my laborious paper writing at home in front of my laptop, so I appreciate it. And I'm so grateful to be here to be honoring Jean's incredible career of inspiring other Indigenous women. And just, I want to note the title on this slide is Indigenous Feminist Ethics of Care, and I want to credit my professor, Dr. Shannon Speed, who's a Chickasaw scholar also at UCLA, and my inspiration for applying to UCLA, and here I am, so Chokmashki Shannon. First, I want to acknowledge and thank Jean for graciously visiting with Nancy and I for so long on the telephone as we prepared for this talk, and the information that she shared with us I will carry forward into my studies and my career. So thank you, Jean. I know you're watching. Pictured here is part of the Cover Girls series, which established Lamarr's practice of refusal. For me, refusal is a framework that Indigenous activists and artists are using to talk about agency and sovereignty. Artists like Lamarr play a pivotal role in setting precedents of refusal. This concept began when Lamarr discovered the work of William S. Sewell, his photography from 1867 to 1874, part of an archive of settler photography of Native people in what is now called the state of Oklahoma. The images produced by these settler male photographers inspired her to create this extensive series of collages, Cover Girls. Lamarr was particularly appalled at the way the women were posed, reclined nude, and objectified. The original photograph that Lamarr is reframing here in this piece is of an unnamed Wichita woman, according to the Smithsonian Institution. In these collages, we see Lamarr's signature color palette of lavenders and purples, and as I also share a deep passion for lavender, please indulge me as I thank Lamarr for giving me the excuse to purchase this new blazer. And in the catalog for this exhibit, curator Ann Wolf explains that this palette evokes the wildflowers of Jean's home in Susanville, and that the color also represents Jean's grandmother. And so Jean is wrapping this young woman, who's placed right there, in safety, rescuing her from the gaze of soul. She is transformed from object into subject. She builds worlds and purples for this woman of softness and safety, lace, feathers, patterns, textures. It seems that Lamarr transforms this woman's expression to one of calm. She looks almost bored in this comfortable world that Lamarr created for her. Even though in each of these collages, it's interesting to see a fighter jet looming above the woman. This fighter jet, to me, represents the ongoing violence of Western settler colonialism and imperialism, yet the woman still is poised and calm. Here's the original photograph by Soul, but we've enacted Dr. Shannon Speed's Indigenous feminist ethics of care by blurring out her nudity. 19th century photographers like Soul and his contemporaries sought to document a vanishing race. Soul commonly photographed his subjects in a studio, posing them and selecting the scenery and props. Photo historian Martha Sandweiss states that photographs are historical artifacts. They are not history themselves. It is our job as viewers to question the way that these images are made and the power structures that they reveal. Also today, the production and consumption of these images and archives carries on. And an interesting note, to publish this image, if I were to need to publish it in a paper, I would have to pay the Smithsonian institution and not the Wichita and affiliated tribes to whom this woman is an ancestor of. Jean, early on, back in the 80s, recognized this power structure. Some more settler colonialism for you. Visual symbolism of conquest, like the one in this scene, has been discussed by numerous scholars, specifically how the indigenous woman's body is often conflated with the land itself. This contributes to the settler colonial domination of indigenous lands and resources. Here we see the indigenous woman as an allegory for America. She reclines nude, and she's beckoning to the Italian explorer Vespucci. She's surrounded by all kinds of flora and fauna indigenous to the Americas, and if you can tell, there's even an armadillo in the corner. I have written about this concept in a recent paper, and I call this figure of the settler imaginary the red woman. I ask, who is the red woman, and how is she constructed, and how are indigenous female artists refusing her? I see Jean's refusal of this figure as critical to this conversation, because this figure is used to justify and perpetuate the ongoing genocidal violence against Native women. This image is nothing new. Soul was just following in the footsteps of this engraver that made this print in 1600. Soul's image was 300 years later, yet they're practically the same and mobilizing the same tropes of the red woman. Where Soul sees an object for consumption, Lamarr saw agency in humanity. This is a theorist that's really impacted my work. As Indigenous women, we have always responded to colonization with strategies of refusal. Audra Simpson is a Mohawk political anthropologist and a professor of anthropology at Columbia University. She's the author of Mohawk Interruptus, Political Life Across the Borders of Settler States. In the introduction to this book, she describes a scene when the Mohawk lacrosse team was traveling to the International Lacrosse Championships, and they refused to travel with a US passport. This held them up for a long time. It made the news. It was a huge event, and yet, despite all of the hassle that they faced, they remained staunch and kept refusing to use their US passports. Simpson theorized this moment of refusal as a moment when Nationals of a pre-contact Indigenous polity simply refuse to stop being themselves. The refusal is a refusal to be consumed by the settler state. It is a political form that predates and survives conquest, and it's tied to sovereign practices. Another theorist that's recently impacted my work is Temers Lane, is a member of the Golden Eagle clan of the Lumi Nation, and she holds a Master's of American Indian Studies from UCLA also. In an article profiling Indigenous female leaders who stand as water protectors against extractive capitalism like pipeline construction and oil drilling on native lands, Temers states, Indigenous women engage the power of refusal on the front line of ancestral homelands to disrupt colonial ideologies of knowledge and power. This image is from her published piece and it depicts Indigenous Women Rise Collective, who are praying at the Women's March in Washington, D.C., representing Indigenous nations. Traditions of refusal. Indigenous women have always engaged the power of refusal. Contrary to the settler fantasy of the red woman, we are anything but passive. Foundational to my own understanding of refusal are stories of Chickasaw resistance to settler colonialism. In 1736, French soldiers attempted to attack one of our villages, but could not, thanks to our female warriors. Letters written by the French back to France complained about the Chickasaw hatchet women. They clearly were sorry to have underestimated us. This piece is part of my own jewelry collection that I made before I was a graduate student. Most of my professional life was spent making jewelry and sculpture. And I created collections to tell stories and share stories about the hatchet women because I wanted to convey that we are not passive as Indigenous women and don't mess with us, quite frankly. Today, other Chickasaw female artists are sharing stories of these hatchet women as well. Shelby Rowe is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation and descended from the Red Skunk Clan. In 2016, she was honored with the Chickasaw Dynamic Woman of the Year Award for her tireless work in suicide prevention. She is a survivor of suicide as well, and because of this, she became a leader in this movement. Beadwork for Rowe is healing. She states, I started to bead and noticed that these tiny broken pieces of glass can all be put back together to create something beautiful again, just like us. This piece is her 21st century hatchet woman, and it is all beaded. It's a portrait of her niece. You can learn more about Shelby's work at her website, shelbyrowe.com, and you can find her work at the museum store at the new First Americans Museum in Oklahoma. Faithlyn Seawright is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation as well, and a recent IAI graduate. She says, we carry generational trauma with us and can only heal by coming together as a people to remember and honor our ancestors. She created this woodblock print during her program at IAI of a hatchet woman to educate others about our tribal history and culture. Thus, new generations of Indigenous women artists are carrying on these traditions of refusal in their work. To quote Audra Simpson again, there was something that seemed to reveal itself at the point of refusal, a stance, a principle, a historical narrative, and an enjoyment in the reveal. This is what I believe Lamarr practices, that enjoyment in the reveal, that joy and humor that she infuses in everything that she does as an entry point to truth-telling. Lamarr's response to Soul's image of the unnamed Wichita woman is beautifully explained by Jolene Rickard, citizen of the Tuscarora Nation Turtle Clan, who is an associate professor at Cornell University. Rickard is cited in curator Ann Wolf's excellent essay in this exhibit catalog. And I read, Indian women occupy a landscape of contact. In Lamarr's invented scenes, Lamarr visualizes woman as center. The figure is surrounded by the West, yet it remains its own stronghold, thus acting as a metaphor for the role of women in Native society. Lamarr's title for the series, Cover Girl, is a humorous play on words, referring at once to the act of covering up the woman, as well as to the term commonly used to describe a woman featured on a magazine cover. Thus, Lamarr meets settler colonial power structures with the joyous practice of refusal. This is inspiring a new generation of artists. Paving the way, she invites Indigenous female artists to refuse to cater to the colonial gaze and instead turn towards their own communities as their primary audience. This piece is titled Portals to Memory, and it's a mural painted for the El Segundo Public Library, and I had the pleasure of curating this project with my fellow board members. And it was painted by Nanaba Chacon, whose work can be seen around the world, most recently in Santa Fe at the Co-Art Center. Chacon collaborated with Mercedes Durame. Chacon is Diné Chicana from New Mexico, and Mercedes Durame is Tongva, and Los Angeles is her community's homeland. This mural depicts a Tongva woman holding a cogstone, and cogstones are a significant cultural item for the Tongva. And this piece represents the Tongva community and teaches the Tongva history to all who see it. Nanaba is not concerned with the settler audience, and she's willing to walk away from projects to remain true to her artistic voice. She quotes, "There is an importance to show Indigenous women strong, existing, unapologetically ever so present in contemporary culture while rooted in tradition." Another artist that I see as following in the footsteps of Lamarr is Cara Romero. Cara is a contemporary fine arts photographer and an enrolled citizen of the Chemehuevi Indian tribe. Her work is now on view at the Hood Museum at Dartmouth University, and in April, she will be at the MoMA, which is exciting. Through carefully crafted compositions, she tells stories specific to each of her subjects. Her process to produce these deeply personal pieces is one of collaboration and careful listening. Here, humor informs the title of this series. This piece is one of several titled The First American Girls, where she parodies American Girl dolls. I don't know if anyone has ever had an American Girl doll. I know I did growing up. She was inspired to create this series when her daughter was looking for dolls, and they couldn't find hardly any that were Native and not horribly stereotypical. And the American Girl dolls only have one Native doll, and it's pretty stereotypical in my opinion. So, with her photography, Romero refuses invisibility and ignorance and then moves it forward. This depicts Naomi, and she's a northern Chumash woman, and her mother is Liamata Fragua, who made all of the beautiful pieces that she's wearing in this image. Romero arranges objects of cultural significance that a modern Chumash woman would need in her daily life around Naomi. Thus, with Indigenous matriarchal joy, Lamarr has paved the way for artists like Shelby, Faithlyn, Nanaba, Cara, and myself, and many others, to disengage from the colonial gaze, to create works that uplift our communities, our children, and our ancestors, while actively planning for bright Indigenous futures. Chokmashki.
All right, we are on to the last and final program. Jean was very much involved in the development of today's symposium, and it was, just like Nancy's tradition, very important for her to have some mentorship and also raise visibility for another younger artist. So I am very pleased to welcome Fawn Douglas. She is an Indigenous American artivist, an enrolled member of the Las Vegas Paiute tribe. She has roots in the Moapa Paiute, Southern Cheyenne, Creek, and Pawnee tribes. Fawn is the head matriarch at Nuwu Art and Activism Studios, located in the heart of historic Huntridge neighborhood in Las Vegas. She is dedicated to the intersections of art, activism, community, education, culture, identity, place, and sovereignty. And with her art making, she tells stories in order to remember the past and to ensure the stories of Indigenous people are heard in the present. Her studio practice includes painting, weaving, sculpture, dance, and other types of performance. And Fawn currently does art and cultural consulting through Nuwu Art and Activism Studio. She works part-time as a cultural engagement specialist at Meow Wolf and is completing her Master's of Fine Arts at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She holds a bachelor's degree in art from UNLV, and now in the MFA program, she teaches classes as a graduate instructor in the Department of Art. While at UNLV, Fawn has served with the Native American Student Association, American Indian Alliance, and the Native American Alumni Club. She has also held, or currently holds, title positions with the Institute for Progressive Nevada, Friends of Gold Butte, Nevada Indian Commission, Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument Advisory Council, and the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe. Fawn is a protector who advocates for environmental conservation, and among her past work includes efforts towards the designation of Nevada's Gold Butte as a historic national monument and participation in the No DAPL protests on the Standing Rock Lakota Reservation. In Southern Nevada, Fawn's activism includes Red Rock Canyon, anti-desecration efforts, protection of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, the fight for national monument designation of Avi Kawa Ame, close, and the ongoing struggle for tribal nations to retain their land and water rights. Fawn is also a survivor of sexual assault. Her experience has also given her the fire to speak out about women's rights, and she has been an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women. She continues to speak up for her sisters and is an active supporter of several other connected movements, including Land Back, Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, and Our Bodies, Our Lands, which recognize the connection between protecting land, water, and Indigenous rights. Fawn.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and I just wanted to thank the people who are in this room and thank the elders who are present, and very thankful to be on these lands and to have this moment to share a moment of joy and love and all of the things. When I thought about what I was going to be saying today, I thought about, well, of course, there's amazing women to talk about Jean's work, to talk about feminisms, talk about history, talk about fighting colonialism, all the things, all the layers. But something that really struck me is that we need to also be coming from a place of love. And when I thought about, standing here before you and standing before Jean, because I know that she's here watching and listening, I'm coming from that place of love. So first off, Hagarawayak Nininian Fawn Niknawuvi. I wanted to introduce myself in my language and, talk about how important it is for us to at least be able to say those words. As an urban native, it has actually taken me a long time to even retain some of that language. And so myself and my daughter, we've attended our Southern Paiutes language classes and listening to our elders and spending that time and even stumbling over the words and knowing that it's okay, as long as we get it, and being corrected and, going through all the motions. So, but yeah, I'm an educator. I'm an educator. I'm a student. I'm always learning. Every single day I'm learning. Even here at this symposium, I'm learning from amazing voices, not only on this stage, but also, within the audience. but why we're here, the love for Jean, the love for Jean Lamarr. Over the past couple years, I've been doing work to protect our Indigenous lands, to raise awareness through my artwork about the harms that are affecting our Gold Butte, our Southern Paiute lands, and even beyond that with Bears Ears, Standing Rock, and so on and so forth. There's so many harms that are against our lands. And when I'm looking up to artists and looking at artists who are doing this work, it's Jean Lamarr. Jean Lamarr has been doing this work for several years, really building that connection to our bodies and our lands, and subverting the idea of what it means to, what that view is, and how other people see us, and really dismantling those stereotypes within her work. So through my practice, I'm in my third year for the Master of Fine Arts at UNLV currently, and a couple years ago, I brought up that I wanted to do an exhibition. I wanted to do an exhibition that celebrated women, that uplifted women. I was looking at and inspired by Hearts of Our People. I traveled down to Riverside and I went to Neonative, this amazing exhibition and symposium, and I thought this is something that we need at our institution. I would love to see something like this. How do we do this? And so through the master's program, I was learning about grant writing. I was learning about making connections, and had already made several connections through my Aunt Suzanne, who I think is watching as well. I love you. And being able to learn about these things is to sit quietly in the room and listen, and to hear the elders speaking about art's presence and how we continue our voice and our image from our lens. And so I asked Loretta Burden to be a part of this, Noel Garcia, Melissa Malero-Moose, Natani Noda, Kara Romero, Roseby Simpson, Roxanne Swensel, and Shelby Westika, emerging artists and artists who are already been doing the things to come together in this amazing exhibition. So when I was going through this, I got a little bit of critique about, my art practice, and Fawn, I'm not seeing a lot of your art in there. You're not really talking about your art. I was like, but my work is here. So this is a zoom in of a piece that I had placed in the Awani exhibition. And for those that aren't aware, in our Southern Paiute language, Awani means balance. When I was going through our archives over at Special Collections at the UNLV Lead Library, I was going through these really frail typewriter pages from our people. So they were so old and frail, and I was going through looking at all the words, and I was just so happy that there was some language that was retained there. And so I was going through them, and I came across this word Awani, balance, Awani, balance. I was like, that is it. Because we're constantly walking in balance. We're constantly walking in two worlds, whether we're within our traditions and our practices, or trying to walk within institutions and really maneuver what that means. Especially being an Indigenous woman, sometimes it is a lonely path where you're being attacked on both sides. You're not Indian enough. You're not smart enough. You're not enough. I mean, it is a really difficult place to be in, to be actively decolonizing spaces as we're maneuvering into them. But it's important to do this work. And maybe it's why, I do come from all these different sides, and I am from these different tribes. I mean, I very much, as I said, I identify as a Southern Paiute woman as I was raised. And I have that Moapa Paiute side in me. I have the bighorns to face all the tough issues in front of me, to really face them. I am from the turtle, the desert tortoise, or Las Vegas Paiute people. I have the shell on my back, so when arrows are flying at me, they bounce off. And maybe, I was completely made for this. And so when trying to retain our cultures, retain and learn about all of these different practices, especially with our basket weaving, how do I also pull in tradition and challenge the ideas of tradition? Well, this is a zoom in of a traditional Nuivi basket. I call it traditional in the sense that I harvested these materials from my environment. I found these materials and I gathered them. No, it is not the traditional willow as I would gather in the springtime with my people, but these are found materials. A little tip I learned from an artist, Gerald Clark, who I very much look up to as well. So I've gathered these and also, pulled in some willows and reeds at the center to really pull myself and center myself that my place is within the natural materials as well. And within the Awani exhibition, one of the main purposes was our students. I mean, there are so many reasons, so many layers that went into this, and Jean Lamarr's work was at the forefront of this. We had different pieces within, and you could see this work of art down below here within the exhibition. But our students were able to see this. They were able to draw those connections, like, why are these helicopters here? Or what do these symbols mean? You know, why is this a sacred space, and why is there this plane flying through it? There's more questions raised by the students and the people who are looking at these works of art, and they were able to expand their minds upon that. And Jean does that. Jean makes you think about all these works. Even last night, I was going through the exhibition, I was looking at every single one. I really need to spend a couple days in there, for real. But it is for our students, and it was for these artists as well, to be able to bridge that connection, not only with artists that are already, been doing amazing things like Roxanne Swensel's work in Balance here that's in the center, but to be able to place a Roxanne Swensel piece next to Shelby Wastika, who's a Zuni Pueblo artist, just emerging, just coming out of art school, but to have those works of art in conversation with each other. Here's a youth that is, really subverting that idea of how she uses ceramics, but also next to Roxanne and next to Cara Romero. And being able to talk about these works of art, people do not just walk in and, okay, they see this and they walk out. People are listening and questioning and also making comments about it. I didn't know about this. Oh, there's that many tribes here? Or, oh, what does this mean? Really starting to question and really question their own identities. But all of this wouldn't be, without also seeing myself somewhere else. I didn't see any other Native artists like myself until I saw another Nuwu girl, Cara Romero. And I saw her and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. This is like years ago. I'm still kind of giddy. I still geek out around artists, I just do. But years ago, I saw her and I saw her work at the Herd. And then I got to listen to her speak at the Neo-Native Symposium. And I was just, oh my gosh, this is happening. Another Southern Paiute woman. And to build that visibility was something really amazing. And I'm hearing this within our students too. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a Native artist or a person. And so we want that, and we want that. This is the way we're decolonizing these systems from the within. We're building these conversations. We're opening the doorways. We're seeing other artists and pulling them in. We're creating these opportunities for our students and the people around us. And also within the symposium that we had, well, the Awani exhibition wasn't just an exhibition, it came with the symposium, where we're talking about Indigenous feminisms and the artist practice. Pictured here is a really loving moment with this Cara Romero and Loretta Burden, and she's being hugged by Noel Garcia. So we have these Great Basin artists talking about their practice and the importance of visibility and being here in the present. And to the left, the male who's standing there, because we have this intersection of community, so we wanted to make sure that we had somebody that was doing sign language for the rest of our community. But we also had Rose B. Simpson and Natani Noda, talking about how they use materiality, how we're also, using our voice and using our practice to come into this space. And one of the questions that was brought up during this symposium specifically is just like, wow, you all look like you get along. Stacey Montooth brought this up. You don't look like you're, fighting with each other or this. And I guess sometimes it can be the norm for, the crabs in the barrel and pulling each other down. But we're in a time where we're lifting each other up. And we're being that example. Thank you. And to come in a place where we're celebrating each other, where we're really listening to each other and learning. And it's like, well, how do we keep on with this support for each other? Well, how has Jean been doing it? Jean's always been doing this. She's always been doing this work where she's lifting up other women, lifting up children. And we saw that within that beautiful video, the documentary earlier. And still there's that theme, our bodies, our lands, our bodies, our indigenous bodies connected to these lands. And look at how her figures stand tall, stand proud. You know, this is our space, this is our place. And her work is an inspiration. Her work was an inspiration for a performance piece, and we were really hoping she could join us for that, but was unable to. But we still moved forward to do this performance called We Danced, We Sang Until the Matron Came, which was more of a monologue. Stacey Montooth from the Nevada Indian Commission was able to deliver this really powerful speech about the current state of where we are with the Indian boarding schools, the history specific to Stewart Indian School, and you know where we go from here. There's a lot of healing to do. There's a lot of listening to do, listening to our elders, listening to the lands, and listening to the current that's around us. And in this moment, when we're presenting this to our students and our faculty, you know, let's think about audience. Who is our audience? Even as I look into the audience today, it is also representative of the audience that we're trying to reach, and that is everyone. It is not only our own people. It is not us preaching to the choir. It is us talking to everyone. We need to educate others about our histories and to quit seeing us in this historical past, but to see us in the present, in our presence, and to see us into the future. And with that dance of resilience, my relatives were able to join us. And so pictured here is Boogie Anderson, Katie Anderson, myself in the center, Gina Yazzie, and my daughter Sol Martinez, all from the Las Vegas Paiute community. And it was important to do these dances of resilience during this time, because after Stacey Montooth delivered that important speech about our boarding schools and the current climate, we had to really show that we are still here. All of us are the descendants of boarding schools, and everybody who is on that stage had an ancestor or ancestors that went to Stewart Indian School. In fact, on the back of Katie's regalia that she created, she has her father's name, Katie Anderson, in memory of Ikaip. And she danced for her father, and she danced hard, you know, to really show that we are still here. And here's just a zoom in of Shelby Wastika. I just think she's so amazing. For those that don't know her, please get to know her. She's a recent graduate of the Master of Fine Arts program at UNLV. But when I talk about, you know, because I did show that image of her work next to Roxanne Swensel's, here's this Zuni Pueblo artist, you know, really subverting that and using ceramics. And you could see the artist's hand within this and how she uses all these different colors within her firing work. But also, you know, to raise that awareness that, you know, she's an amazing artist and in the present. Like when people who are non-natives think about, you know, pottery, think about ceramics, the image is this of, you know, the pot, the vessel. But here is an artist that is taking that and taking that back, like, no, I am a Zuni Pueblo woman, and this is also us. Melissa Malero Moose. So we had this work in the Awani exhibition, and this is called Access Denied. And when we think about access and lack of access, I mean, when you look closely at this, is a beautiful abstraction of this different mixed media pieces. There's pine nuts within it, but it also looks like it's barbed wire. And so when we think about access and how our people are denied these things, well, what do we do when we're denied these things? We make new ways. We make new ways. We make new connections. We connect with our lands, but we're also connecting with these other materials. So I showed you that zoom in of my Nuwuvi basket. Here it is pictured on the wall with some of our willow that is hanging off it, but those found materials. But also next to Loretta Burden's work, her fish trap and her seed beaters. Loretta Burden is also a very dear friend and a mentor of mine. And it's important, you know, for us to have mentors, no matter what age you are, whether you're young or old. I think mentorship is incredibly important. I couldn't be standing here today if I didn't have the mentorship of our elders, our friends, our people, and even younger people. I have mentors that are actually in their 20s too, that, you know, show me like, oh, this is what's new, or I'm doing this, or, you know, the question, to be able to have that dialogue and that pushback. And that pulling in. And so Loretta Burden is an amazing artist from the Fallon Shoshone Paiute tribe, and she's been a dear friend of mine for several years. She's known me since I was a little girl in Las Vegas, but it was an honor to have my work next to her work in the Awani exhibition, and for our work to still have that conversation and our friendship next to each other. And after the Awani exhibition, we got to go back to the Nuwu Art and Activism facilities. So in Vegas, my partner and myself, we purchased this synagogue. It was really dilapidated and empty. It was a squatter's palace for many years. But we got the building, which is that gray building. The green one was the house of the rabbi, and it used to be a bathhouse in that casita. But we've refurbished those buildings, and we're still in construction phase for the Gallery Community Center, which is the gray building. But we're already activating these spaces, and Loretta Burden was able to share her weaving practices, for us to weave an object, not anything that's within the traditions. We weren't there to make a cradle board. We weren't there to make a winnowing basket, but we were there to just, do some weaving, because within our communities are intersectional. We have many tribal members from many different places, and we're dismantling the stereotypes of colorism, but we're also connecting with other different, people from different places. We have people who are African American. So within our facilities, we have that we're facing Afrofuturisms, ancestral foodways, all the different AF things. And here's a picture of some community members doing the basket weaving, and Kara Romero with the Shanti McGee, and Tammy Tiger in the middle, and several other of our artist peoples in Vegas. But when I talk about love, and I talk about love of our community, and I'm talking about love of place and space, that's who it's for. We're doing this for everybody. We're doing this for the children. We're doing this for our intersectional communities. We're doing this for our past, for our ancestors. And we're doing it for, also ourselves. This is healing. This is love. This is love of our lands, is to be able to keep those cultures going, to be able to learn about those cultures, and to be able to be in these spaces where we are taking space and being able to educate about those things as well. And so this photo is a group photo after that, and this is an event from our nonprofit organization, Indigenous AF, or IAF, helped create. And there's more to come. There's more to come with that as we really dismantle stereotypes and move into the future, Indigenous futurisms. And we'll be talking more about Indigenous futurisms and place and space as we get into the February 17th talk with artist Rose B. Simpson. I was able to do this amazing prayer moment with her and a group from our community. And we did this transformance at the Nuwu Art facilities, and that was a performance with her. So not pictured here is Rose B. Simpson, Nugget, her daughter, and Posse Melendez. But this is me and my relatives. It's me on the side with Gina, my daughter Sol, and cousin Katie Anderson. But we're just having a moment of, really just loving who we are in this moment. This is after the transformance is done, after, we walked together, we walked in this sacred way, and really just flexing, being in that moment. So I really look forward to talking to you more about that in February as we have this conversation about this really pivotal moment where we're in this moment of land back, and what that means to take back our spaces. Thank you.
Fawn, thank you so much. Your work is inspiring, and Nuwu Art and Activism Studios has been a tremendous partner of the Nevada Museum of Art. The Transformist that Fawn mentioned was a partnership with the museum as part of one of our recent land art conferences, and we are so thankful for all that you've done to work with us. Thank you, Fawn. So I think that begins to bring our day to a close. It's been such a pleasure to have all of you here. Thank you to all of our speakers who've traveled great distances to be with us, to everyone who's here with us in person, as well as the couple of hundred people who are joining us virtually. I'd like to mention that Jean has been watching. I've been texting back and forth with someone who's with her. She's been commenting. I don't know what she's been commenting, but I'm sure she was having a fun time doing it. As I close, I'd like to acknowledge someone else on our staff, our exhibition coordinator, Pamela Chadwick, who's worked intimately with me and Jean on this project for the past 4, maybe going on 5 years now. In fact, Pam has been with Jean all morning, not just a couple blocks from here at a home that we secured for Jean when she came. They've been watching together. Jean, I know you're listening, but Pam and I will always have great memories of our times in your studio and your home. I loved how Judith Lamarr said earlier that when Jean says move, you move, and I think Pam and I know that really well. But perhaps nothing is more memorable than the endless laughter that seems to always come out of our conversations. I think we laugh probably more than we work, and there's something that's really rewarding, and we're very thankful for that. We have both learned so much from Jean, and we'll continue to learn from her, and we'll be forever grateful. So we thank her for putting her trust in us. I just wanted to note that today's program is recorded. In a couple of weeks, we'll be releasing it, so you can watch it or refer to it any time. There's many programs coming up. Jean hopes to be present for all of them. The exhibition will run through May 29th. So there's an invitations down at the front desk. You can pick one up, and it lists all of the different programs, and we hope to see you for those. Especially May 14th, towards the end of the exhibition, when the exhibition will start to come to a close. We're planning a full community day and sort of a closing party for Jean, so that's another opportunity to join us. So again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Lunch is available, and I'd just like to make sure that we ask our elders to serve themselves first. We have a lot of people we weren't expecting. We hope to have enough lunches. Our cafe on the first floor is also open as well. And I'd just like to hint that I believe we have a special guest who is en route to the museum right now. I'm getting texts as we speak that Jean is on her way. So I don't know whether she'll be up in the Sky Room or in her exhibition, but I ask you to give her some space when she gets here. I think all of this is very overwhelming, but she really is trying to get here, and I think she's on the way. So I'd like to thank all of you very much, and thank you for joining us today.